Hello, and welcome back to Cookie Pocket. This podcast is, in fact, about film. Today is episode 27, and we are going to be talking about Marathon Man from 1976, a film starring Dustin Hoffman as a grad student whose brother is a secret agent who's been embroiled in a scheme involving an ex-Nazi and some diamonds, and suddenly his brother is killed, and Dustin Hoffman is left holding the bag, and now he has to escape from these Nazis who want to ask him over and over again if it is safe. I think that's a decent description of what this movie is about. As usual, why don't we start out with overall thoughts? What did you guys think of the movie?
Well, I think your description is a little more succinct than the movie itself. I liked it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 right. Because it was certainly gripping. So, like, in terms of what a thriller is there to achieve, I think it achieved that suspense. And what an incredible cast. Dustin Hoffman is very quickly becoming one of my favorite actors, and of course, Laurence Olivier, the legend, and Roy Schneider actually did something for me in this, as opposed to the bloated and underwhelming film that I like to call Jaws.
Oh, no.
We won't get into that.
Mitchell and I are restraining ourselves right now, but I'm glad to hear that he did something for you this time.
Yeah, no, I thought he was great in this, and I really do think the performances kind of made it for me, and I think that was especially important to me because I had great difficulty following what was going on, especially for the first half. And at some point after I'd watched it, I read an IMDb summary or something, and I was like, okay, what I just saw makes more sense now. But it would probably be a 4 or even upwards of a 4 if I just had a better understanding, and if the storytellers cared more to key in the audience. But I guess to some extent that withholding that information is part of what makes it a thriller. So I think that could have been balanced a little better, but overall, very, very good. I enjoyed it.
All right. Yeah. Mitchell?
I'm on very similar terms with Christian, 3.5 out of 5. I did enjoy it. I actually kind of skimmed the movie. Like, I kind of skipped ahead every 5 seconds about a half an hour ago. After watching it once. Okay. Please let me finish my sentence. I watched the film, okay?
I was worried you had pulled a...
I know, yes. I know what you're thinking. Yes, I did not do that. Yes, I watched it a couple days ago, and I skimmed it again, and skimming it really helped me figure out, like, have it set in my mind what actually happened. Because it was kind of difficult. I didn't want to have to keep pausing and put on closed captioning and stuff and try to figure out, like, you know, keep a track of all the dialogue and everything. But it's not like the movie is necessarily complicated. It's just really, there's a lot of detail that needs to be picked up on, if that makes sense. I feel like the more that you pick up on, the more you get out of it. But, like, it's just, I feel like there was a lot of, like, kind of, I wouldn't say, I don't know. It kind of felt like a train that just kept chugging, and, like, a lot of the time, as long as you didn't really think about what was happening, what had happened already, and try to figure, you know, make it a big circle and figure everything out, then you're good. Because I think there's very few moments where you could be like, oh yeah, he connect that back, besides the fact that he was a marathon runner. That's, like, the main thing. Everything else is kind of just, like, things kind of unravel in a linear fashion, which has its caveats, but also has the distinct positive of being able to build up tension, and not knowing what's happening is a part of the thrill, kind of what Christian had said. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I really liked the performances and the cinematography, and all of the, you know, usual facets of film were very good. My major issues just being that it's incredibly hard not to try to pick out the plot holes and try to just, you know, hyper-analyze everything, because the film's like, look at how complicated everything is, and then you're like, well, I'm not going to, because it's going to make me start to delve into the parts that don't make any sense. So, but otherwise, you know, I understood generally what was going on, and I appreciate, you know, the different, you know, original ideas and stuff that were done. So I really liked it. 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah. So I gave this movie a 4. This is my second time seeing it. And actually, I didn't expect to give it a 4. I expected to bump it down to a 3 on this viewing, because I saw this last summer. And I gave it a 4, but my memory of it was giving it a 4 more out of a sense of respect than a sense of actually enjoying it. And I remembered being kind of confused as to what was going on. And I'll say that on a second viewing, the pieces really fell together for me on this. I would agree that the first half is very fast-paced, and it's quite easy to get lost. But at the same time, it is kind of an espionage movie. So I think that is part of the point. But I think the movie sort of suffers because there were big segments that were cut or rewritten at the last minute. Apparently, there was a scene. There was a scene where Roy Scheider's character Doc kills the two people who murdered his associate from the opera house. There's a scene where his character goes to the opera house and he finds somebody who's meant to give him information who's had their throat cut. And apparently, there was a scene where he killed the two people who killed that person. And had a bit of a chance to vent and maybe explain things through monologue, but the scene was cut because it was too violent, or it was considered too violent by test audiences. The original ending of the movie, I like this ending quite a bit, but the original ending, which we'll talk about the ending a little bit more further on, but the original ending, Babe, Dustin Hoffman's character, just shoots Zell in Central Park, and then rants at his corpse in an insane fugue, which would probably have been an opportunity to bring back connections of the thesis he was writing and him trying to clear his father's name and being able to unload those stresses, and just isn't there because they changed the ending. But I do still enjoy the movie despite those kind of holes in the plot and the way that it is sort of confusing and difficult to follow, except for one scene in the middle, one rushed scene in the car that kind of explains everything. I really enjoy the direction. I think the buildup of tension throughout this is near Hitchcockian in places. I think it makes really good use of environmental chaos. I was kind of reminded, I finally saw Joker, and in Joker, there's this aspect of the garbage men are on strike, and that's something that kind of adds to the environment and adds to the atmosphere of this city going down the plug hole. In this, there's a very similar kind of theme or idea, where the baggage handlers at the airport and a bunch of other people throughout the city are on strike. So it adds to that sense of chaos, and there's protests going on, and there's a real sense that the center of this world cannot hold, and this little story is just kind of one part of it. So I really admire the direction. I really liked the cinematography. Last summer, I thought the cinematography was flat and boring, and I don't know what I was thinking last summer. So production-wise, I really like this. Script-wise, I enjoy it, but I agree that there are issues. So overall, it comes to a 4 out of 5 for me. Now, we've kind of touched on individual scenes and actors and whatnot, and I kind of talked about the direction a little bit, but I wondered what you guys thought of John Schlesinger's direction in this. Did you have any thoughts on how certain scenes were put together, how tension was built?
Well, all right.
Go, Christian. You have to know what directing is.
Oh gosh, what is directing? I don't know. I don't know what directing is. I thought it was effective. It felt these are all layman's terms, but it felt very harsh, and I never felt like I was supposed to be comfortable with anything that was happening ever, and I think that was deliberate and effective. And this isn't your question, but I think the score was really good, and also really, really, really contributed to that quite a bit. I don't really know where to draw the line in the sand between directing and cinematography, but from what I could tell, both were achieved very well. And also, before I forget, going into this movie, I had no context about what it was. I think I vaguely knew it was a thriller, maybe because you had mentioned it, Zach. But I was going in blind, and I was like, I feel like this is going to start with a long shot of Dustin Hoffman running. And I was right. And I can't prove that I thought that, but I absolutely did, and I was right.
Okay. Mitchell, any thoughts on direction, cinematography?
Yeah, for the most part, it wasn't super like super like I was really focusing on that, honestly. Like it wasn't like it didn't really feel like uber original. Like there's obviously certain sequences and certain areas and shots of the setting and stuff that were really definitely notable, that definitely kept the tone very tight. But like Christian had said, definitely very harsh. I feel like there's really not a whole lot of things to be happy about.
No.
I feel like the overarching theme of like the Nazi stuff and like the using that kind of historical reference things always, I think that's always kind of cool. I think there's a lot of value to that. And even though that's been done 8 bazillion times, I feel like this was a generally more creative way of going about it. And not really focus. It was kind of focusing in on the events and the isolated incidents as opposed to focusing in on the big things. Because I feel like movies like Bond movies especially are like really focused on big, super overarching ideas and stuff.
Big
and
set
are, like,
pieces.
Big set
Yeah.
pieces and like try to make a big deal out of everything and are super overdramatic and everything. But I feel like this was definitely like one thing after another. Like when like even the Uruguay kind of sequence was very, very isolated. They didn't want to make a big deal about it being in Uruguay. They just wanted you to know that it was in Uruguay.
Yeah.
But with the exception of like New York City and France. But like even then, like, France, there wasn't like a huge like thing going on. It was kind of just like showing just every incident. Like everything was kind of from incident to incident. So I feel like having an isolated focus on each of the scenes and not making it bigger than it has to be it's a good thing to be referential about, kind of knowing that you're doing that is a very good quality. And I feel like knowing how ambitious you're being in those scenes is also good. So I feel like the director definitely had a clear understanding of what he wanted to do, and I think it really came across well in most aspects for me.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with your point on individual moments. In particular, I really like kind of the opening sequence of this film. I really enjoyed. I really appreciated this time round. The opening sequence of the film is this German man, this elderly German man, who we later find is the brother of this ex-Nazi. But he's taking a safe deposit key out from a bank, and then he gets in his car, and then his car breaks down. He essentially gets into a road rage debacle with this elderly Jewish man. And they kind of pursue each other through the streets, crashing into each other, until eventually they're at like a frustrated, like angry, stressful point where they just both crash into an oil tanker and explode and burn to death. And I thought that was kind of a great microcosm of the film and what the film is saying about like anti-Semitism and cultural hatred and things like that. I thought that opening sequence to me felt like it does what all great opening sequences do, where it's almost its own little symbolic short film that says something about the film you're about to watch, but could almost stand on its own as well. So I really, really appreciated that. And I do think there's directorial touches brought to little moments that are really interesting. One of my favorite shots in the whole thing, in the whole first half, because the first and second half of the movie feel like very different films almost, but there's a scene where a child's pram or a stroller is pushed up to a curb.
I was like, what are you saying?
And there's a doll in it that's a bomb. And when the doll finally explodes at the end of the ticking, you kind of just see its head break apart for an instant in slow motion. And I thought that, even when I was watching it, I kind of went, oh, that's cool. Like, I really liked that touch.
Of course you did.
Where it
Of course you did,
zooms in on the specific moment of destruction and kind of slows things down before everything turns into chaos. I really appreciated that. But yeah, I could definitely see how the direction wouldn't necessarily stick out on first viewing, but in a year or two, I urge you guys to check this movie out again, because those little things really do stick out. I was very lukewarm on this movie when I first saw it, and last night I kind of loved it, and I didn't expect to. So, in light of talking about individual scenes, I used to do this thing when I was younger, where I would ask my parents what the most frightening film they'd ever seen was. And I did this all the time, so they got very frustrated with me. But on a couple of occasions, my father would bring up this movie. And in particular, he would bring up the infamous dental torture scene, which is a scene that I feel like most parents have seen or remember in some way. There's a scene in this film where Laurence Olivier's character, Dr. Zell, has Dustin Hoffman in kind of strapped into a chair, and his character is an ex-Nazi dentist. And he comes into the room, and he's asking him, is it safe? Over and over again. And Dustin Hoffman doesn't know how to answer. This was something his brother knew before he died, but he doesn't know how to answer. And so eventually, Zell starts to use his tools of dentistry to torture him into answering. And it has this kind of legacy as a very tense, suspenseful scene. Did it come across that way to you guys? How did that scene impact you?
I think it was more scary just by virtue of the fact that it was out of left field. I feel like it kind of was, it accelerated tones that were kind of already passively existing. And I think that's the scariest part of it. I think the actual scene itself to me was not scary, but like the scene existing amongst everything else just added to the tension for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Mitchell. And I also think it's a testament to the actors because when Laurence Olivier is all he's doing in that scene is holding some dental instrument like loosely in Hoffman's mouth, and it's up to Hoffman to make it seem like he's in excruciating pain.
Yeah.
And he does that, and that takes a really, really good actor to do. And I think I agree with Mitchell that I sort of anticipated it because it's like the cover image on the letterbox. But yeah,
darn it!
It is. Isn't
also,
it? Yeah.
the DVD copy I borrowed for this has Dustin Hoffman holding a gun on the cover, and I was really upset about that because that's not like something that would be a given.
No, you wouldn't predict it.
At least through the first half of it. But anyway, back to the dental torture. When it began, I was like, oh wow, Hoffman really convinced me. That was horrifying. I'm glad it's over now. And then it wasn't over.
Yeah.
So I do think I got what Mitchell said in that it was sort of like jarring and unexpected, and then it went on, which I also did not expect. Yeah, great scene, and shout out again to our theater teacher for teaching me that it is up to the abusee to really sell those scenes, not the abuser.
Yeah. So speaking of cuts, actually, the dental torture scenes had some cuts to them specifically too, but in this case I actually agree with them. Because apparently the dental torture scenes originally featured close-ups of like the tools hitting his teeth, specifically the drill hitting his front incisor, which I think would be too much. I think it's way worse if it's just left up to your brain to imagine, oh my god, that drill is hitting his tooth, and that's going to be the most painful thing I could ever imagine. If you actually see it, it becomes almost like a Saw movie, where it kind of takes away the imagination of the tension in the moment. But I do, when I saw this movie for the first time, I knew about that scene because my dad had told me about it. But
darn it. Dad.
It still affected me. Kind of the first time that there's like a specific moment where Zell like presses down and Hoffman lets out like a really pained cry, and it really got to me when I first saw it. I was feeling some chills, and then you think that's going to be the only scene, like Christian alluded to, and then there's sort of a middle scene where Dustin Hoffman's temporarily broken out and then comes back. And I feel like that first dental torture scene really adds to the tension of everything afterward. Because when he gets brought back and the two henchmen he thought were dead come out to get him and he's screaming, "But you killed them! But you killed them!" Like, you really kind of understand the total panicked state of terror that he's in that moment. I think it really works. Something that our former theater teacher actually told me about for this scene. Speaking of the man himself, Dustin Hoffman at the time was really into method acting. So he, before that scene was going to be filmed, he stayed up like multiple nights in a row because he wanted to seem really like beaten up and really kind of under the weather. And apparently Laurence Olivier noticed that he was in bad shape and said, well, what's wrong with you? And he told him what was going on. He apparently laughed and said, "My dear boy, why don't you just try acting? It's much easier."
Wow.
Which I think is a great Laurence Olivier story. Apparently they didn't really get along, but I think that's a great moment.
That's great.
So, speaking of further scenes, the climax and the conclusion. I referred to it beforehand, but I think we should discuss it, specifically because it was changed around. I mentioned that original ending, which was written by William Goldman, who wrote the book, and also wrote, like, The Princess Bride and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He was kind of the filmmaker, not the filmmaker, the scriptwriter of the 70s and 80s. But he wrote that original ending, and then Robert Towne, the screenwriter for Chinatown, was brought in to write a new ending, because Dustin Hoffman apparently didn't like the original ending, and he was kind of one of the big-name stars involved in the film that had a big hand in it being produced in the first place. So, in this new ending, essentially Hoffman's character hunts down Zell when he's trying to sell his diamonds, takes him into a sewage filtration plant, and at gunpoint essentially says that he has to eat as many diamonds as he can, and the rest of them are going to be tossed into the water. And you kind of get sort of an interview on the thought processes of that character, and is he going to eat the diamonds, is he not? What did you guys think of that ending? And based on my description of the original ending, do you think it's a more effective ending? What do you think could have been brought out by that original ending? What are your thoughts?
It was okay.
The current ending?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was all right. Even with all of the diamonds involved, I could dare say it was lackluster.
Oh. Okay. All right.
But it was okay.
good.
I understood, like I said before, I understood what he was trying to convey. The director was trying to convey. But like just asking him to eat, like he's trying to humiliate him, and he wouldn't understand. He doesn't understand humiliation, so he's already at like base level 0. He has no idea what it's like to have bad things happen to him. So just having to eat diamonds and be humiliated is bad, right? Mm-hmm. That's the way that I perceived it, and I thought that was fine. But for the context of the rest of the film leading up to that point, I don't feel like it was that impactful. Because all he was doing is really just asking him to eat physical objects, and I liked how he was throwing them at him in his fits of rage and making him mad, and kind of just, and it's supposed to be like, oh yeah, like that's like the worst thing that could happen to him, humiliating him, and then having him fall on his own knife is like, but him falling on his knife, I like that specific moment. But like just the throwing, like I felt like that was going on for too long. I feel like they could have come up with something a little bit more creative. Personally, I feel like it was okay. It kind of worked. Just like I had said. But I mean, I don't know. I didn't feel like it was that impactful, honestly.
I guess.
I think I preferred the ending they went with to the other ending that you described, Zach. But since you've told me that the Chinatown writer had his hand in it, I'm starting to like it a little less, because I'm realizing, the final, the sort of like walk away bit at the end is literally just how Chinatown is.
Well, kind of. I don't think it's quite thematically the same thing, but
I don't know. I think it's pretty similar. I think you're walking away from something you can't unsee, and something that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life, and there's kind of nothing left to be done about it, so you walk away.
I haven't seen that
and
before.
I found that I found that effective.
Yeah.
And I dare say that even though you might consider it derivative, I still found it really effective, and I think I prefer it. I don't know, because I'm going to go back on this, because I at the same time, I feel like loyalty to source material is important. So I don't really like strong-arming the author of the story into something that wasn't his.
I like this ending better than the other one. I just full disclosure. Okay. I like this one better. I just feel like there could have been something better. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't want to nitpick too much. I liked it, and I guess I'll leave it there and walk away as the credits roll.
Yeah. Wait for the cops to find your gun and he threw in the ring. Darn it.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't actually shoot him, so it's not like they're gonna find.
Yeah, but they don't know that.
We don't know anything. We're just.
Well, they're not gonna find a bullet that they can. They're not gonna find a bullet in his body, so they're not gonna search for a gun in the reservoir. Is what I would say. Yeah, I mean, it is fully licensed though, so it'll be traced back to him. But that's beyond the story. That's kind of a universe that exists outside of the story. After the credits roll, it kind of ceases to matter.
It was just a joke, Zach.
Well, it's good to seriously think about these things. I do enjoy this ending. The original ending to me feels like something that probably works better on the page than would have worked in film, though I would have liked to see it filmed, at least. That's the kind of thing where it's always fun to see those original endings on like DVD or Blu-ray extras and to go, oh, well, how does this change my feelings at the end of the movie? But I do, for me, the eating diamonds the eating diamonds thing works because, I mean, I don't know. To me, eating diamonds is not only a humiliating thing for this character, it's also a thing that's going to be incredibly painful, because diamonds are like the hardest substance on Earth, and they can also be very, very sharp. Mm-hmm. So they're going to really cut up his throat and intestines and stomach, and could potentially kill him if he eats enough. I do feel it's kind of a tonally unusual ending, because Babe doesn't really have full control of the situation. The way you would typically see something like that written is we've got this climactic dental torture scene where Zell has complete control over Babe. And then at the ending, we have a scene where Babe has complete control over Zell, and the tables have turned, and he's now the cold-blooded one because he's been made to be like that by the previous scene. And we don't really have that here, because Zell kind of regains control, and Babe kind of just has to throw the whole suitcase down a flight of stairs, and Zell kind of trips over himself and stabs himself in the abdomen. But as Mitchell was saying, I kind of like that too. I kind of like the fact that this once feared famous Nazi dies by tripping over and stabbing himself while running down a flight of stairs after some diamonds, and then he just sinks into sewage at the end of the film. I think that's a great kind of humiliating ending for this horrible, horrible character who used to be on top of the world in another place in another time. I kind of think I would kind of agree with Mitchell to a certain extent that the connective issue between the beginning and the end of that climax, that ending, isn't quite there. There's like a minute of story that doesn't quite work for me.
Right.
Where the tables kind of return again, and there's a bit of a flip-flop, and it doesn't quite make sense to me. But I would say that I prefer this ending to that original ending. So on that note, before we move on to our bits, as Christian likes to refer to them, our fun bits, as Christian likes to refer to them, any final thoughts on the movie, and would you recommend it or would you not?
I would recommend it.
There we go.
I would recommend it, but I would be, have to be in the right mindset and just, you might have to watch it a second time if you're really intrigued. If you're honestly, I feel like a large majority of people will be at least intrigued throughout the entire thing. I think it's that well done and that, tight enough and has the exact right elements that it needs to be a good thriller, even if however long it came out ago. So I think it's good. Yeah. I genuinely enjoyed it, and I think it's definitely necessary if you're really into thrillers. That's definitely a good one, especially from the 70s.
Great. Yeah, I mostly agree. I would recommend this, but only to people that really like watching films, and I don't mean that as like the obvious criteria for ever recommending a film to anyone is that they like watching films.
Gen Zers.
All right, do you like movies? Because that's going to make a big difference on whether or not you like this movie.
Whatever Netflix recommends to me.
I really thought I was saying something there. God. What I mean by this is I would only recommend it to people that would really have the patience for how confusing and how much it demands of an audience member.
Yeah.
So, like if this was season 1, I don't know, maybe I would be whining about how confusing it was and giving it a 2, honestly. I don't know. I'm glad that I'm not now, because I do think it's really good. But I would recommend it to a very select group of people, I guess. And also, how come when Cassandra Cain swallows a diamond in Birds of Prey, that's no big deal? Do you have an answer to that, Zach?
You're the one who likes that movie. I gave that movie a 2. You're the one who's the big fan of that movie, Chris.
It's a 3.
The thing about swallowing diamonds is that it's something you can still get resolved within a certain amount of time. It only starts hurting you once it starts getting digested. What is he just gonna wait? He's gonna be like, we're gonna wait 24 hours. We're gonna be like, ugh.
If you eat a bunch, I imagine it'll cause a big problem before then. But to wrap up, I would recommend it if you're, as Christian said, if you're willing to be patient with it. I would say if you're willing to watch it twice, because I think it's quite possible that first viewing isn't going to do it for you. But I would say if the first viewing doesn't, the second will. And I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it if you're willing to give it the time, like Christian said. So, with that in mind, I think we can move on from our film discussion. Mitchell is swatting a fly, so pardon our laughter.
It's actually a gnat.
A gnat, pardon me. It's time to move on to our other segments, starting, of course, with the week in review. So this is maybe a theme song. Will there be a theme song? Yes and or no. We'll find out when it goes out.
We will.
Basically, this is a new segment we've introduced in Season 2, where we discuss basically any form of media that we've seen or consumed since the last episode went out, and our thoughts on it, and what we'd want to tell other people about it. So with that in mind, Mitchell, I believe you had something for Week in Review.
Oh my gosh, caught off guard again. I recently finished Silent Hill 2 from 2001. It is a video game. Do I recommend you play it? No, I don't. Nobody should play it, honestly. It's too emotional. Can't handle it. Yeah, I'm on a psychoanalysis craze recently, apparently. This is a game that essentially is nothing. Don't watch the movie, okay? Unless you really want to know how much.
Don't watch Silent Hill, or don't watch Silent Hill.
Don't watch Silent
2.
Hill the movie, and don't watch
okay.
the one after that.
Okay.
Unless you want to see how Western civilization ruined something that was actually good from the East, and I think it was amazing. I think they did a really good job. And I don't. It's very hard to describe, but essentially, Silent Hill exists as a place where you go to solve your psychological issues, and it essentially guides you there to the point where you don't even remember why you were there. And essentially, James Sunderland goes there because his wife died, and he gets a letter from his wife saying, I love being in Silent Hill, and you have to come and get me now because you love me and all that stuff. And then James is like, I know my wife is dead, but I'm going to go there anyway. So he goes there anyway because he's tempted by his own depression to go there. And essentially, he goes through this whole place seeing horrific monsters. When I was little and my mom had played the game, I had accidentally seen the game, and I thought they were pink pants fighting James. They were not. They were two pairs of legs sewn together, as I found out. My imagination was amazing. Okay, but anyway, I did play this. It's an incredibly good story, and I would recommend it to anyone who likes games of that time and likes horror games of that time. It's very reminiscent of Resident Evil and very hard to control, movements, and it's a lot less focused on combat as much as it is about what's happening to you in the environments. And I feel like Konami does a really good job, making do with what they had with the hardware they did at the time to make something extremely psychologically horrific. And I really enjoyed every minute of it, even if the puzzles took me like a half hour to figure out sometimes. So I recommend it to people who are into that. Very specific audience. But otherwise, even looking up the story is incredibly good, highly influenced by Jungian philosophy and things like that, and dealing with libido and things that you struggle with in your life. Libido being Jungian libido, not Freudian libido, which would be sexual. Although that is a part of it. But anyway.
All right.
Fair enough. Oh, I guess should I go now?
I think you said you were going to conjure something for Week in Review.
Yeah. I have something to conjure. I just remembered. I guess it was either last night or 2 nights ago. I watched Before Midnight, the final in the Before trilogy, as it's called, directed by Richard Linklater and starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy as Jesse and Celine. And I found it to be a fantastic series of films, some of the best romantic comedies I've ever seen. And I guess to give a brief synopsis of the first one, Jesse and Celine are both on this train, and they sort of connect, and Jesse convinces Celine to spend a day in Vienna with him before he has to catch a flight to leave and go back to America and I guess never see each other again. And it's a really interesting synopsis, and a lot of each film is just the two of them talking, but it's really, really effective. And I can't quite explain it, but Linklater is just really, really good at portraying the depths of emotion and bringing out the good and the bad and feeling affection for one another. And the two sequels revisit the same characters and the same actors 9 years later. So it's an interesting concept, and I found it to be really effective. So anyone out there that likes rom-coms, I would highly suggest you give it a try.
Yeah, you called them rom-coms twice. Are they comedies or are they dramas?
Not really. Oh, well, they have. I suppose drama would be a more apt description.
Okay, all right.
But I don't know. I guess I feel I feel guilted into putting the com at the end of rom because I guess there's this idea that rom can never be dram because rom is not good enough to be anything but calm. But,
well, rom will always be calm to me regardless, so...
Yes.
No, I feel like, Romeo and Juliet is
It's
rom,
hilarious.
and that's a drama. So.
Okay, yeah,
I think it's
sure.
funny.
Shakespeare.
I'm going to get the
Alright.
poison. He
Funny.
goes to the poison boy. Get the poison from
Man.
the poison.
That,
I don't
that
know,
Queen
I
Mab
think-
speech, oh, I'm in stitches every time.
Yeah, I think Mercutio is pretty a goofy fellow. Anyway,
Yeah.
go watch
Gosh.
some Linklater movies, everyone.
Or play Silent Hill 2 if you don't know what to do with your life at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Or, as I'll recommend, watch The Thick of It, which is a show by Armando Iannucci, who we know from making The Death of Stalin, which means that, Christian, you would probably really enjoy the show, and Mitchell, you probably wouldn't find it funny. Essentially, it's a show about... It stars Peter Capaldi, who a lot of people know from Doctor Who, is in it as Malcolm Tucker, and this is from like 2005, who essentially he plays the Prime Minister's enforcer, and it's a show about British government, specifically people in the Department of Social Affairs, and how everything is constantly riding by the seat of its pants, and nobody really knows what they're doing. The first episode is maybe one of the funniest things I've seen in a while. They decide they have to make a new law, or a new announcement on a law to get back at the press. And so they decide they're going to do it, and on the way there, Malcolm Tucker tells them that they can't. So at the school where they're going to make the announcement, they have to make up a speech in like a minute about how they're going to announce that they aren't making an announcement. It's pretty great. And like
That's
every
pretty
episode
great.
is kind of that almost like Seinfeldian nothing folding on nothing until everything just descends into total chaos where nobody knows what they're doing and everybody has gone home and these ministers are just in the offices at like 3 a.m. trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces. I really recommend it if you like anything by Armando Iannucci, but if you're not into that kind of political / historical / military comedy, I don't necessarily think it'll appeal to you. But, you know, maybe check it out if you're at all interested or like Peter Capaldi or British television, because I think it's a riot. So without further ado, we'll move on to the second segment of this show, hosted by Mr. Maric.
Oh my! Oh, I get a title,
Yes.
Mister. How exciting! This is what we like to call the rundown.
Oh, I forgot
Pew.
the Family Feud. What does it go? How does it go?
I don't know.
No, that's it.
I can just go like,
that's the whole theme.
Survey says. There, that's the new. I have to do it like
That's the new rundown theme?
Yep.
I don't know if I like that.
I'll get back to you next time with the Family Feud theme. Okay.
All right.
I
All
already
our
forgot
themes
it.
are currently under repairs.
Yeah. This is the rundown. Woo! All right. What is the rundown, Christian? I have forgotten
What
that.
is
I
the
don't
rundown?
know.
I just don't know anything.
my mind is blank now, thanks to you.
We give things
we
to
have
Zach.
a minute.
A minute to
Yeah,
give things to Zach. That Zach gives us numbers, and the numbers mean stuff, and we do it. There we go.
Yeah, that was great.
Okay.
Thanks, Mitchell. All right. Where is it? Okay, found it. All right, I'll start again. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Dustin Hoffman running.
4 out of 5.
A Rolex for a dime and more change.
4 out of 5.
New York traffic.
4 out of 5.
The French protesting.
3 out of 5.
Unremarkable actor from Jaws actually doing well in this.
3 out of 5. You put me under a pin there.
Babe being a simp.
3 out of 5?
McCarthyism.
2 out of 5.
The setting changing every 5 seconds.
3 out of 5.
Pronouncing seals in French.
3 out of 5.
The name is Scheider, Roy Scheider.
4 out of 5.
A liberal pacifist with a sense of vengeance, or Zach Garrigus.
4 out of 5.
Is it safe?
I knew you were going to do that. 4 out of 5.
Laurence Olivier as Christian Zell.
Oh, 4 out of 5.
The government handling holes in government by using more government.
2 out of 5.
Dental torture.
4 out of 5.
Babe initially being as confused as the audience.
3 out of 5.
A moody score.
4 out of 5.
Marathon PTSD.
3 out of 5.
Swallowing diamonds.
4 out of 5.
Changeling drama ball.
3 out of 5.
Falling on your own knife.
4 out of 5.
Opera. Don't answer that. No. No. Bad.
I was going to bring up the changeling bouncing ball, and I didn't. There's a scene in this movie. We watched The Changeling was my first episode, first film that I selected last
episode
season
2.
for my first film. There's a moment in that where a ball bounces mysteriously out of the darkness, and there's a scene in this movie very like that where a soccer ball bounces out of the darkness at Roy Scheider.
Absolutely.
And I thought, that's like The Changeling.
Yep.
And then I didn't bring it up. But wow, great minds think alike, I guess.
That all credit to Mitchell on that one.
Well, speaking of which, Mitchell, why don't you introduce the film that we'll be talking about next time in episode 28?
We're talking about Sam Mendes, 1917, 2019 film. Woo! Yay! All the young kids will actually know what this is. Woo! It's that World War I movie that came out. Woo! With George McKay and Dean Charles Chapman. And
Oh, is this the one with Harry Styles in it?
no, this
No.
is not the one. Shut up. I almost fell for that. Anyway, it is yes, a British war film where it's perceptibly in one shot, which it isn't.
Yeah. No.
So there you go. But
Mm.
it's very good. Universal Pictures, and we'll talk about that next time.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot it was them. I guess he pitched it on a bond sale. But yeah, we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're interested in us once again playing to Mitchell's war niche, come back next time when
My
we'll
niche
be
is
talking
better
about.
than anybody else's niche. Okay.
That's a relative statement. When we'll be talking about 1917. Until then, goodbye and good night.